Hello, welcome back to Jacob's Books Corner, where we're in a different spot always. As this is actually going to be somewhat similar to where we're going to be recording. It's just going to be against this wall, which is really, really cool. Either way, the important part here is we're starting a brand new series today, which I'm very, very excited to get off the ground and things. And this is a series that takes a lot of time to do and plan. I do want to mention none of these thoughts have been written down. I didn't structure this video in any sort of form, except I kind of know what we're doing. And so there is going to be chapter times linked down below in case there is a certain portion of this, since we're talking about Karin Slaughter. This is a Karin Slaughter wrap-up for Standalones. I want to make sure that's very clear, as I've never read a series by her before. I found her through The Good Daughter, and I've read all of her Standalones since. And so we're going to talk about those individually, and the way those will go is that we're going to have a non-spoiler review, a spoilerly if I have any discussions about spoilers, and then for each and all the books in publication order, so when they got written, when they got published to the public. And then I'm going to rank them at the very end with my favorites and tell you which ones you should read and you shouldn't read. Star ratings and stuff will also be a part of here. And yeah, I read the 4 standalone and also the 2 novellas, yet novellas are not going to be ranking here. I will mention if they're worth it or not for anybody who is curious, but I'm not going to be talking about them in great lengths and such. So, that, my friend, is what we're about to jump into. And it's a whole thing. Alright, so the first book that was written by Karin Slaughter that was not a part of a series was Coptown. Now, Coptown and me have a very, very interesting and unique relationship, as this is the last book I ended up actually picking up. I picked it up last month in June, as I have been trying to read it since, like, March, as this video has been planned since, like, September. Long time coming, like I said. Oh my god, we're dropping. And that is Coptown. So Coptown is her first novel that she released. It was written back in 2011, and it follows a police academy in Atlanta after one of their cops is brutally murdered. We follow several different characters in here, including a major family in the police academy, or in the police department, and then also a newcomer. I had major issues with this book, and I am going to point them out. Overall, this is, you know, as we talk about the books, you're going to realize the ones I like more than the others. This is by far my least favorite. I DNF'd at 50%, is what my Goodreads page tells me, and that seems to be the place where I normally DNF. I don't like cop procedurals. I've talked about this many, many times before, which is why I really enjoyed her later novels, because this is not a novel about a victim. This is a novel about the people solving the victim's crime, or solving the people trying to, you know, get the person who did the victim. You know how it works. But as all of her other standalones, which we'll talk about, is actually about the victims and not the police force behind it. So I did have major issues with it, and those contain spoilers. So if you don't want any spoilers for Coptown, just jump to the next screen, which is Pretty Girls. So when Pretty Girls pops up on the screen, as I don't have a physical copy of that book, that's where you need to go. So, Coptown spoilers. Why did I find this book revolting? And why am I so sad to say that? Because I absolutely love Karin Slaughter. And I know she did tons and tons of research. I know for a fact that's just how she works. And I've watched interviews with her and stuff. It's just how her brain does it. And obviously you can tell in her writing on how much she really cares about the material she writes. And I want to have this, like, conversation with you in the comments, because I'm curious to see what your guys' standpoint is. This book deals with a lot of things such as racism, misogynistic things, homophobia, and other type of things back in Atlanta in 1975. And I bring this up because I found it to be very offensive in several regards. Now, the blatant racism would make sense for the time period, and I think a lot of people can chalk this up to, oh, it's the time period. But the main mystery here is about a character that ends up dying, and they can't solve the reason why he died or how he died, and he ends up dying by sucking off another police officer, and he gets shot in the head for doing so. And so a big part of here, the reason why I ended up putting it down, is because the F word, for what you don't call a gay person, is used like 40 times, and it was extremely triggering for myself. That cannot be the case for everybody, but the N-word is used inside this novel and some other things. Also, I just want to very quickly mention depictions of the black characters I felt to be very ill-informed, and I just did not really like the What's the proper word here? I didn't really like any type of representation that was a part of this novel. Even the strong female characters did not seem like they fit, and the misogynistness just seemed like it went too far, which is really interesting because we're going to talk about Pretty Girls next, where people can say that went too far. So it's very interesting. I think she's a very controversial writer. But my question for you guys in the comments, in case you have read this story, if you've read other stories like and you don't want to read this one, what do you guys feel about period pieces? Because they do have to depict what the world was like, but how would you like to see that depicted? And do you think it was right for me to DNF it at 50% because of the depictions, and it wasn't so much of like what was being said around them or how rude they were or how all the individuals were very unlikable except for like one character? No, this was just simply because of different depictions of characters in general and the different people she put inside this world. I would love to know you guys' response. Do you think I'm making too much of a big deal about this? Because it is a period piece novel. My question. Alright, moving on to Pretty Girls. Pretty Girls, I ended up getting, I want to say a 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, for sure. And this was her second novel that came out. It also has a novella that goes with it, which is Blue Hair, Blue Eyes. Or Blue Eyes, Blue Hair. Something like, no. Blonde Hair, Blue Eyes. Which is amazing, by the way. That's a 5 out of 5 star. I highly recommend you check out the novella. And personally, my opinion on the novella, even though I said I wasn't going to talk about it, is just simply, you don't need to read both in case you can't handle the trigger warnings that go with Pretty Girls. Pretty Girls is a very graphic and depiction of female violence. Violence upon a female. It talks about the cycle of violence and how violence shapes people and how it continues to shape certain individuals as they grow up that way. This is a common theme throughout most of her novels, is the cycle of violence, but this novel I think really depicts it very well. A lot of people call this torture porn, and to be honest with you, I completely agree where you're coming from. It is gratuitous, and it's nonstop, and it's long, and it's drawn out. But I think that was partially the point of the novel and the point that it was making, as the novel itself is like 450 pages long. The audiobook, which is how I like to read Karin Flower, just how I tend to enjoy a thriller in a way, are like 20 something hours long, and so it's a very long process. But I thought All a Pretty Girl was very satisfying, and so I highly recommend you pick up Pretty Girls if you think you can handle it. I would look into the trigger warnings. There's a bunch of them, and so I can't go through them all right here. But let's talk about some spoilers for Pretty Girls. Now, if you have not read Pretty Girls, and since I am highly recommending it, I would just jump to when I hold up The Good Daughter, which is the next book we're going to be talking about. And once again, those things are going to be individually linked down below, so there should be like a timestamp somewhere that you guys could probably jump to. Either way. So, spoilers for Pretty Girls. I really, really enjoyed the twists. This one, it didn't, like, it's really weird because I didn't cry in this book. Even though I thought I was going to cry, there's moments in it that I really, really thought so. And I thought the scope maybe got a little too big towards the end of everybody being involved, but also that makes complete sense. And so basically the huge twist for this novel, since I didn't really get to the big twists for Cottown, I couldn't really talk about those. But the big twist for Pretty Girls was the fact that her husband was a part of this deal where they sold snuff films where they tortured women in basements. They peed on them, they cut them up, they prodded them, they whole bunch of really, really horrible things. And it's about this girl who ends up, I guess I haven't really been describing what it was even about. It's about this girl who ends up finding a videotape of her husband after he is murdered, and so forth and so forth. A lot of people involved in it, and once again, this is a depiction of cops in a very, very horrible light form, which I find to be very interesting, just because that seems to be how all depictions, even when reading in cop form, through Karin Slaughter, I just don't really know if she likes cops. I'm not really sure. I would love to watch interviews, so if you guys have any of those pointers or anything, let me know in the comments down below and point me to them, as I would love to read it or watch it on her. The reason why she decided to pick cops in this particular light and manner, one, it's very realistic. I don't believe anybody would believe, even if you have factual evidence, I don't even think people would believe it. But this was really graphic in nature, and I do think it went maybe a step too far in the final act. but I felt it was extremely satisfying when he died, and the fact the place burned down, and overall, what a great read. Alright, we're going to move on to the next one, which is The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter. Now, honestly, this is the inspiration. Originally, I wasn't going to do a Karin Slaughter wrap-up, but I'm doing a Riley Sagar and Taylor Jenkins read, so here we are. And she was the first one that I finished. The Good Daughter, I gave a 5 out of 5 beautiful stars. It's one of my favorite thrillers of all time. Like I said, you can basically guess the ranking because there's not so many books. Like with Taylor Jenkins Reid, that's going to be like a 40-minute long video, so it's going to take a minute to get to the rankings. This is going to be like a 15-minute video. Either way, The Good Daughter follows a family of prosecutors, originally when they're children, and then jumps 20-something years into the future. The original, the before storyline is this family is traumatized by a dramatic and horrible event that happens in their lives, and it changes them, and you get to experience that event. And then the future storyline is about a school shooting and how all that stuff is solved in, legal cases in general, and trying to figure out who was the perp and all that sort of stuff. And both people follow that same exact characters, this family. Now, she did something so magical with this book. For instance, Charlie, which is one of the main characters here, I related to on such a personal level. There's a lot of things that she goes through that I personally have gone through in my life, that it's just, once again, I just love when I meet a character that I can just look at and be like, I get you. I get every wrong turn you're making, and I understand why you're doing it. And that's not something I can find very often, especially in thrillers. It's very hard to find likable characters in thrillers. I also really enjoy her depiction of what she has talked about, how she likes her standalones to be from the victims and not from the people doing the crime. And that is a beautiful way of stating it with The Good Daughter. Those are all my non-spoiler thoughts on The Good Daughter. I highly, highly, highly recommend you check it out, but I also highly recommend you check out the spoiler warnings, trigger warnings, as there is such things as rape and miscarriage throughout the story. So, moving forward, the spoilers. Oh, The Good Daughter gave me so many cold chills. So The Good Daughter is one of those books that when the ending comes, you really just are in for a ride. It's a long build-up, but I really enjoyed all the medical stuff with Samantha and all the lawyer stuff with Charlie. I liked their dad, Rusty, at some points, and I liked their mom, Ma'am, at other points as well, but ultimately it was the ending that brought everything together. The, realizing why she can't have kids, which is just tragic. Figuring out who actually did it and the reason why they did this. And I think how it all came together in the last 10%, it made me cry. It bawled my eyes out. I just couldn't handle it. There was so much going on, and it was just beautiful, guys. I could not recommend this book enough. And I know these spoilers are so vague, but it's just because I don't even know how to describe it. It's something you have to experience, and you guys, if you guys did experience it, you understand. And I've watched other people talk about The Good Daughter, and I've also been recommended The Good Daughter before this. I ended up picking up on a whim. It was just out of let's pick it up. I wanted to read Pretty Girls. It seemed a little bit be too much, and so people recommended The Good Daughter, as it's not as extreme and doesn't pop up as often, which is, I would say, pretty much true. So yeah, I don't know. I highly, highly, highly recommend. The last book we're going to talk about is Pieces of Her, which is getting an adaptation on Netflix. This follows I think it's also 2 storylines. Yes, it is. It's all about the idea of we don't know our parents and what they have been through. So it follows a storyline of heist people, which takes place back in, I don't even know, the 90s or something like that. It's an older time period. And then we jump ahead and we follow this woman who ends up killing this man at a diner hold up, and somehow everything is tied in. This is by far not originally was my least favorite. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but obviously Cobtown took that place because I didn't finish it. And I don't really feel right reviewing Cobtown to this fullest ability because I didn't finish it, but it's still a part of this video. Either way, with Pieces of Her, I liked how the story unfolded, but once again, I came from Pretty Girls and The Good Daughter, and so I was expecting this really, really complex and like integral mystery, and it was much more of a thriller. Like, these are all thrillers, but it's much more like a heist thriller. It wasn't so much of someone's dying, someone's getting murdered, or being tortured, or having great like family dynamics and things. That wasn't really present here. This was a much more, I would say, formulaic story. Would be the way I put it. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. I say if you do want to read it because there's adaptation coming out. It's not the best one on this list, and I bet you anything it's not the best one she's ever written. So moving on into the actual spoiler section for this, I just did not really enjoy the second storyline of the girl who has the family, and then she ends up being a part of this whole corruption. I didn't like the whole heistness. I didn't like the whole, this person died and the grand action sequences and things. It just did not feel Karin Slaughter enough to me. I liked the motel showdown. I liked the idea of how everything came, full circle. But overall, I was not very satisfied, and also I was just really disappointed. It's the best ways I can describe the reason why I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. But with that being said, let's move over into the ranking section of this video. One of the best sections, I tell you. The ranking section goes as following. I'm just going to tell you the ranking. By the way, this is how I would recommend the books you read them, in the order I tell you. And yes, they're based on the rating I tell you, so you can already guess the ranking, but I'm still going to tell you. The first book is obviously The Good Daughter. It's the most recommended one I can tell you. I also did read its novella, which was posted through the Kindle app. It's an ebook novella. I thought it was okay, but it's not necessary to be a combination. And then we have Pretty Girls, which is an extreme story, but I highly recommend it. If you cannot handle the extremeness of Pretty Girls, read its novella, because you still get the same impact of several storylines that they want to tell in. And Pretty Girls just need much more tiny little bit, and also the way they work on feminism and several other aspects of life into this little short novella she did was amazing. And then we have Pieces of Her, which is by far one of my least favorites of Karin Slaughter read so far. And then, of course, we have Cop Town, which I DNF'd, so it's automatically at the bottom. I think this would have been a 3 to 2 star rating anyways, and so it would have been a tough fight between the two. I would have probably chose Pieces of Her, since I just really do not like cop procedurals. It's just what it is. Alright guys, that's my ranking and review of Karin Slaughter's wrap-up. Let me know in the comments down below if you highly recommend, if you think I should check out the series. I don't want to just read her standalones. I think I'll check out the first book, which is called like Blinded or Blind Spot or something like that, in the Will Trent series, as I do know both series are connected by characters and stuff, so I'm going to read the Will Trent first and then the other one next. If I really like them, I will review them separately. I will not be doing individual reviews. I'll review the whole series as a whole, depending on how many books there are. Yeah. I mean, we're reviewing 7 Taylor Jenkins to read, so, like, you know what I mean. Either way, if you guys enjoyed this video, please maybe a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below, hit subscribe, and I'll see you all next time for another beautiful video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.